this is not within what you're doing, but it's probably got a knock-on effect and it could affect it. And it's a pet peeve for me because I've seen it in Ireland, I've seen it in the UK, just from people I know, and Poland. So it's an international thing. Is there's a lot of cowboys out there. So I'm not on about the developer that you'd be after checking, but a lot of times they'll have subcontractors or even individuals that come in. Because like I remember even in Ireland, there was guys, they came from Poland to Ireland. They rented a house. A guy was teaching them how to plaster, and then they came up and went plastering. What I would love to see is a kind of ranking system, rating system, whether it's a subcontractor, developer, or the individual, that stops this. Because sometimes people buy a home and they do the internal finish and they get a cowboy in there because they look at the price and they destroy it. Based on your experience with AI, with everything, can you ever see some system like that? Because there's a lot of people that are paying for that for the rest of their lives because of the cowboys that are out there.
Yeah, I think workforce management is a critical part of any successful business, right? And I think that the appraisal process that we employ involves a really thorough assessment of the cost sum analysis, which determines the build cost per square foot on every scheme. So in order to scrutinize that square footage, the cost of the building that square footage, you need to have an understanding of how that has been broken into different phases across the scheme. That's part of their appraisal, right? It's part of the valuation appraisal that the independent or the independent monetary surveyor would also be utilizing, and looking at how that developer would deploy specific skills and the costs associated to that is part of that review. What we can't tell people how to do is to run their business, but we certainly see how technology can provide the continuity of use of resource, both in white collar and blue collar roles. So professional roles from architects to planning consultants, all the way through to roles on the tools of blue collar workers. And that really is about developers who use the same people. There'll be lots of subcontractors involved for specialist skills, right? And you see that now with recruitment agencies that provide specialist resource to construction companies. But I think that the matrix that you're really talking about is teams that are experienced working with a specific project manager, site manager, or construction company, and those teams are always reused. So that knowledge base of how to work for that particular brand transfers to the next scheme, and then transfers to the next scheme for that particular brand within that construction company. And I think every developer has a slightly different approach. Some developers main contract to themselves through their corporate structure. Others outsource that main contract and just project manage the build. But fundamentally, the same principles will apply. And it will always start with the scrutiny of that cost sum analysis on that build cost. And obviously, when you can pull that apart and look at how have they calculated that number, that's when you'll get into, who are the resources, where do they come from, and what skills do they have, and how do you back that up? And that's part of the appraisal process, as I say, for us. But I do think that technology has a role to play in how you can standardize some of that behavior. We're not at a point yet where we're documenting that, but it's definitely on the roadmap with one of our partners as to how we can use AI to simplify not only the storage of their information, but make the passage of their workflow a lot easier for their teams, and therefore create robust processes that allow for professional development, allow for endorsements, allow for accreditations, and that being something that their team can work toward, because that means that there's a full process around professional development, career development, which in turn means longevity and, almost the guarantee of additional work. And fundamentally keeps people motivated to work with that company. As I'm sure you're aware, subbies in particular is a very self-employed nature, very self-employed business by its nature. But businesses that want to grow, want to retain resource, and want to have control of costs. So ensuring that you have that structure, ensuring that you're able to offer those benefits, it's a win-win for every party if it's done properly, right? So that there are plans afoot to create structures that will enable people to do exactly what you say. But it's for the developer. It really is for the developer. What we envisage is much like a software company selling licenses to software. And it's about how do you create those frameworks that a company can easily adopt and roll out as a solution to some of those problems.